There's no sign of election fever gripping the Belarusian capital, but then most people already know what the result will be. President Alexander Lukashenko has been in power since 1994. He hasn't held any election rallies this year, telling factory workers he's been too busy working for the nation.
I'm not as confident of being re-elected as Trump was, but I've already started signing decrees. I'm not waiting to see if I get elected or not.
The biggest threat to Lukashenko's grip on power came after elections in 2020. Tens of thousands of people protested across the country for months. The president flew over Minsk armed with a rifle. 35,000 people were arrested. Hundreds of thousands left the country. This year, there's little chance of a repeat of the protests of 2020. Human rights group Vyazna, which is labelled as an extremist organisation, says there are around 1,250 political prisoners here. All the opposition leaders are either in jail or exiled. The opposition claimed that the real winner of the 2020 election was Svetlana Tikhanovskaya. She'd stood in place of her husband, who was jailed ahead of the vote. Now exiled, Tikhanovskaya tries to make sure opposition voices are heard by speaking at events like the World Economic Forum.
We have to demand together release of political prisoners or access, at least access, to people we know nothing about. So, and it should be like demand from the whole democratic world, to dictate. Stop repressions, release people, and maybe then we will talk to you.
Isolated from Europe, Lukashenko relies on Vladimir Putin for support. The Belarusian economy is now geared to supplying armaments for Russia's war in Ukraine.
This policy of sanctions and maximum political pressure, it basically failed to deliver the intended results. And plus, it created numerous unintended consequences, including in the realm of security and even in the context of the war between Russia and Ukraine. So I think that this does incentivize some renewed interest to look for communication opportunities between Minsk and the West, and Minsk wants that as well.
There are some modest signs of an easing of repression. Key opposition figures like Maria Kolesnikova have been allowed prison visits after nearly 2 years in isolation. And Lukashenko has pardoned more than 250 prisoners over the past 6 months. But opposition groups say this election is not the time for renewed protests. It's far too risky, they believe. Bernard Smith, Al Jazeera, Minsk.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.